Welcome to Wealth Untethered, your guide to the principles and mindset of a genuinely wealthy life. This podcast explores universal laws, principles, and strategies that lead to wealth and fulfillment. We delve into topics like investment, cash flow, business, estate and legacy planning, longevity, health, science, and more. All in an attempt to examine and challenge your mindset about what's possible for you. To learn more about Wealth Untethered, visit our website, wealthuntethered.com. Remember, our insights are not direct financial advice, so consult with your financial team before making any decisions based on the topics discussed in this show.
I'll never forget watching two large U-Haul trucks backing out of the driveway of our home and down the street the fall of 2010, and my wife and kids following them. You see, getting up to that point of those two U-Haul trucks backing out of our driveway and going down the street, and my wife and kids leaving me literally to figure out my shit, I found myself succumbing to the high risk equals high reward mentality when it came to wealth creation. And I put everything in. I slid all my chips onto the table, kids' college education, all of our retirement accounts, everything over $4.8 million. And the end of 2007, I lost it all. I lost all my cash financially and all of our family's money. And I didn't come from money. I paid my mom rent my senior year of high school. And when my wife and kids left, I found myself on the bathroom floor screaming to God. And I contemplated taking my life in that moment over money. And like I said, I didn't come from money. I was fascinated by money at a young age. Seventh grade, took a job to sweep floors, to empty trash cans, and to be around motorcycles. I was fascinated by motorcycles. Seventh grade, I was making $2.25 an hour. And I loved that process of earning $1 and spending $1 myself. And as I've told so many of my clients over the years, Patrick, like there's no substitute for our kids than them earning $1 and spending it themselves. And so that worked really well for me. And I got up through into college. I was engaged to be married, and I started making really good money selling cell phones going to college. And that got me into the financial services industry. And I quickly saw that what was being taught to everyone out there, what's being taught to all of you out there, and I found myself in that situation of taking this extreme amount of risk on my money. Number one, I told myself I was young, and I hear typical planners out there today telling their clients, "Hey, you're young. You can afford to take more risk on your money," which is not true, by the way. And we'll talk about that. But I had done that, and I was fascinated by money at a young age. I wanted to make more money, and there was a level of fulfillment that came from me, but it was totally unbalanced. And I was gambling at the end of the day. So on that bathroom floor, alone, desperate, unhealthy, mentally, physically, and there goes our logo. Mentally and physically, I was unhealthy, and especially emotionally. And financially, everything was gone. And in that moment, I had a rush come over my body, and I told myself that I was going to extract the lessons from that whole experience, apply them in my life, and to teach them to as many people as I possibly could. And that's worked. That's got me to this day today. That's part of the reason why you and I are creating and have been creating for all these years. But the point I want to make in that story of sharing that financial loss that I incurred is that as I was going through it, Patrick, I was only concerned in the beginning about all my property value assets, my property value balance sheet, all the cash that was gone, the what I call the scene, Like I could see all of that. Actually, I couldn't see it all. It was gone. But that was the scene, right? The financial assets were completely gone. The unseen that wasn't so recognizable to me at the time was that of my courage and confidence, my faith in myself and mankind, my courage, my hope. Like it was completely gone. I was distraught. I felt worthless because I tied my self-worth to money in my life. And I gave no regard at the time to what we now call my human life value assets. All of us have property value assets and all of us have human life value assets. And then came this whole conversation of I wasn't protecting myself mentally, because when that happened, the end of 2007, I went dark in 2008. I was dark in 2009. I was dark for the better part. I was dark for all of 2010. 3 years of my life, Patrick, I was dark. I was in my pit. We all have these peaks and valleys in our life. My valley was 3 years. I told you earlier this morning, you're talking about your kids and some of the experiences of them growing up and where you were at in your life. But I was there physically, and I thank God to this day that I am still here and that I was there physically, but mentally, I was not there. I can't tell you much that went on in our family's lives, especially with our kids in 2008, 2009, and 2010, because mentally I was totally checked out. I didn't have the protections in place mentally to pull me out of that like I do today. And so I'm excited, Patrick, for us to go into this episode. Today's episode is titled Protection Equals Production. And yeah, we're going to talk about insurances. We're going to talk about auto insurance and homeowners insurance and liability insurance and disability insurance and transferring the risk versus retaining it. But we're also going to talk about the unseen, which are the insurances of our mind and our mindset. So I'm super excited to jump into it.
So as you were talking, the thing that kept coming to my mind is, you had this experience, right? So you can look at this experience as life happening to you or life happening for you.
Yeah.
Right. So given that was, well over a decade ago, what have you learned from that deep valley, that abyss of life, I guess you could call it, that you have applied, and how do you explain to yourself why it happened to you, obviously in a way that you've turned into an incredible career?
Yeah, as you were saying that, Patrick, I was thinking back during that time, 2008, 9, and 10, that I shared in the story of just being totally, mindless, like just trying to survive physically and mentally. And then when you're asking that question to me, because I didn't have the awareness back then. I didn't have the awareness that I have today. And it's and at a much deeper level, it's levels of consciousness. Like my consciousness back then was a lot lower in certain areas than it is today. And all the more reason and why I'm so passionate about this infinity wealth tool. And when we set out to start these podcasts, we didn't set out to, hey, we're going to create this infinity wealth tool. We wanted to get together and have conversations and add value to people's lives. And if there's things that they could pick up on, and then you quickly said, hey, how about this? And we're like, yeah, let's create a tool out of that, things we're already doing and using in our life. So one of the things that I've learned is that there's a daily routine, things in that infinity wealth tool that I do on a daily basis. And especially I do them when I'm being challenged and wanting to create clarity in my life around any area of my life, whether it's around property value assets or human life value assets. And again, property value assets are things like our home and cash and savings, more of the seen, and then the unseen. Although we could argue that human life value assets, unseen, are very well seen also. Abilities to communicate would be a human life value asset. And if we're angry or happy, those are human life value assets also. But certainly our knowledge, our expertise, our purpose and passion in life, courage, confidence. And so one of the biggest lessons, and I'm glad you asked me that, I hadn't thought about it for a while, but one of the biggest lessons is that of daily routines. and being cause in the matter of life. We talked about in an earlier episode about being cause, being accountable. And it's exciting for me. Like some of this, Patrick, as I'm thinking about it right now, can be very overwhelming. Like, so if you're listening to this and you're like, oh my gosh, there's just so much and they've done so much and they're learning so much and here's where I am, like take it in steps. Make sure that you celebrate and appreciate along the way. We have to. You and I check each other all the time. Are we slowing down enough to look at the pictures on the phone of your son with this big giant stuffed bear in the vehicle? I'm like, oh man, dude, that's beautiful. Like, that's amazing. Like, really feel that and take that in your life.
Well, and this is what I'll say is, you know, the reason I have tremendous respect and admiration for you is I think you epitomize, in a sense, wealth, right? Because we defined wealth in our first couple of episodes as being able to extract fulfillment from every area of life in the moment, right? And far too many people attach, right? Or they tether what it means to be wealthy to them to some external thing they don't have, they want and they don't have. So it's essentially making a contract with themselves to be unhappy until they have that thing, right? And obviously having that thing, right, it happens in the moment and then you achieved it and then you're off to the next thing. So it's this perpetual unhappiness and unfulfillment. So looking at wealth untethered, it's obviously we want to look forward to things. We want to have, you know, a trip or an experience, and that may be in the future that we're working toward, but it doesn't need to affect the lack of fulfillment and lack of wealth that you currently have.
Well said.
Right? So looking at that valley, right, that depth of sadness, right, of anxiety, of I don't even want to be alive anymore. Getting to that point, you know, rock bottom, I guess is a cliche word, right? You realize things, your body realizes things that you don't want to have happen to you again, and you don't want to have happen to people that you care about. And so what you've brought to, you know, business, the way in which you give financial advice now that you did not necessarily, I mean, you may have used the words before, but now it's like there's so much more meaning and energy behind those words that you bring to others' lives so that you mitigate or minimize the potential valleys that they're there in the future. They're going to happen. Life is peaks and valleys, right? And the idea is like optimize the peaks, maximize the peaks, minimize the valleys.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And the time that we spend in those valleys, I spent 3 years. Today, you know, shit still comes up today, but I'm not spending 3 years in those valleys.
Yeah.
And especially with the Infinity Wealth Tool, which is a compilation of things that you and I do on a daily basis that's working, that we want to invite all of you to test and try in your own life. And we'll continue to add to it. We'll get feedback and we'll test things in our own life and we'll add that to the tool. But it's something for them to use. So the Infinity Wealth Tool is a protection piece. Our mindset in doing things on a daily basis is a way to protect our courage and confidence.
Yeah.
I love Dan Sullivan, a strategic coach. Love his learning products, strategiccoach.com, Dan Sullivan. But he talks so much, and he coaches entrepreneurs around the world. He talks so much about one of the number one things that he likes to assist other entrepreneurs with, business owners, people in careers, just people in general, with protecting their courage and confidence. There's that word protection. And we buy insurances, we buy auto insurance, we buy homeowners insurance to protect against a loss. But what are we doing to protect against our mindset? To protect our mindset, to be able to have that courage and confidence, because I lost my courage and confidence, and which is the unseen, but it showed up as the seen of being checked out mentally with my family for 3 years.
Yep.
3 years.
But showing up to life without courage, without confidence, okay, it is, most people can put themselves in that mindset and see the results they're going to get, right? Those results are neutral, but most likely a decline, right? So valleys, as we were talking about before, valleys aren't this going from, hey, you're at a peak and you go immediately to a valley. Valleys are an iterative process. Something happens, okay? And if you lack courage and confidence, then it's going to lead to maybe a little bit more of a valley, then a little bit more of a valley. And then by the time you know it, you're at that bottom of the valley, right? So the idea behind courage and confidence, right? I think we can all look at times in our lives where we basically put a stake in the ground and we said enough, right? This is not going to happen. I'm going to show up. I'm going to do this. I'm going to conquer it. It could have been in sports, right? It could have been in an artistic competition, right? It could have been that this is the woman I want to marry and I will do whatever it takes, right? It could have been that degree of certainty that allowed you to show up to make it happen. Now, looking at, again, peaks and valleys, if that's a peak for you that doesn't occur regularly, this is what we're talking about. Because having certainty in life can be a daily occurrence. Bringing confidence, bringing certainty, right, allows you to continually grow at the maximum level, at the optimal level. And there's ways to do it. And I would say the Infinity Wealth Tool, all it is a process, right? It's a series of introspective questions that you can discover what's in your way, what's blocking you, and then have a process to turn it around and essentially make progress, find opportunity, right? Because you love to say, just as much as you're the problem, you're also the solution.
Yeah.
And so that process allows you to see why you're having a challenge, why the obstacle exists, because it is the way to grow.
Yeah, 100%. Hey, we're in the new studio, Patrick.
I love it.
I wanted to talk about that right from the beginning and almost forgot, but just completed this studio here at my home office. And we got some other things we're going to be doing, some different lights and hang some things on the walls and stuff. But man, I'm super happy with it.
I love it.
It's fun.
Sounds
it's got
good.
a really good feeling to it. It's really
totally
abundant. And
well, that's one thing I was mentioning about you that I found super valuable is you're not OCD about it, but you love order. You love things looking good, right? You make sure things are done I don't think it's 100% possible to have everything perfect. It's not. You try to get close enough there, and you're good, and you're still good if it doesn't get 100% there. But it looks amazing, man. I know that you're going to put some more stuff in here, and man,
thanks,
it looks awesome. Well done.
Thank you. And that's a form of protection. The mindset, my mindset when I walk into an area here in my home office, I walk in here and it feels abundant and it feels wealthy to me, then that protects my courage and confidence.
Yeah.
That gives me drive. That's a form of protection. So I hope that you're starting to see, Patrick, you and I have conversations about this all the time, but I hope our audience is starting to see the seen and the unseen. There's ways to protect because protection equals production, right? This is, it's not just the mindsets, principles, and strategy. It's mindset, principles, and strategies, financial freedom. So it's not just about creating more cash flow, but it's about living wealthy and what that means in our lives in all areas of our life.
Well, look at it this way. There's a visual I like that I've shared with you a number of times where, if you look at experience, you look at especially valley types of experiences, you can consider those a root system of your tree, right? So the deeper the roots, right, the deeper you can protect how you show up to life allows the trunk and the branches and the leaves to withstand storms.
Yeah.
You're gonna have winters, right? You're gonna have harsh winters in northern Utah this year. Harsh winter kind of sucked, right?
Record breaking.
Yeah, but the point of me bringing that up is there's probably some trees that died.
Yeah.
But there's some trees now that are thriving and they're stronger than they were before the winter. So the idea is to have a root system, to have an environment that you operate in that has a deep root system that allows you, like you said, courage and confidence to not only withstand a storm, but to thrive through a storm.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. Well said. And as you were saying all that, Patrick, I want to make sure everybody hears this from us, that if any of this is triggering you in any of our episodes, I would encourage you to look at that. One of the life lessons for me, and we'll include this in the Infinity Wealth Tool, that if I'm triggered by something, that's an immediate sign for me to look at it further. If it doesn't trigger me, then I just move on. I just move on. But a trigger, if I hear something and it triggers me in some way, that's an area for me that I'm telling myself, there's some opportunity there. There's some opportunities for growth. There's some opportunities for progression. And at the end of the day, this whole living wealthy and having things untethered in our life brings me more personal happiness, fulfillment, and joy. And as I feel that, I have more to offer to those around me. And you guys keep hearing me say this, but I'm saying it because if you don't have that in your life, if you're not experiencing that, there's an opportunity for you to experience that and have that in your life. And we wrote up on the dry erase board here in the office that things are either working or not working. So protection equals production. I want to go into a classic example of homeowners insurance. Homeowners insurance, whether you have a home that you're purchasing or renting, if you're renting a home, there's renter's insurance, there's some liability protection there. But let's just take a real basic example of a $500,000 home. If someone owns a $500,000 home, they have the ability to insure that home for replacement costs up to $500,000 and no more. The pure definition of insurance is the indemnification of a loss. What was lost in the event that X occurred? Well, in this example of a $500,000 home, if the $500,000 home burnt to the ground and they had proper coverage, they could have that $500,000 home replaced. The replacement, the indemnification of the loss. If you had a $40,000 car, you could insure it for $40,000 and no more. What about a human life? Yeah, it's always an interesting one. How do you insure a human life, and why would you want to insure a human life? And for me, and we talk about this a lot with life insurance as a tool to not only store cash in and a strategy with and different things like that. But today I want to just talk about the death benefit of a life insurance policy. And for me today, the level that I leverage it in my own life, and I talk a lot about leverage and utilization, and I would encourage all of you to look at things in ways of leveraging things and utilizing things, especially when it comes to some sort of a tool or a property value asset, and definitely human life value assets also. But the ways that I leverage that, number one, when I know versus hope that I have a certain amount of protection when it comes to insurances, that frees up part of my mind and gives me permission to continue to produce and experience life at a higher level.
Well, this was, so going back to like to episode number 3, where we talked about cash flow, because we like to compartmentalize all things financial into 3 categories, right? It's cash flow, protection, and then wealth. So we talked about cash flow, which is essentially we have value, we bring that value to the world, and we get money in exchange, and that allows us to live a specific lifestyle. There's unlimited capacity for us to create value. Okay, so what we're speaking to is protecting your mindset, whether it's having optimal insurance, whether it's having, so optimal insurance, I look at the maximum amount, right, of insurance, okay, in the most efficient way possible, right?
Okay,
And efficiency, because we look at cash flow, right? Not just as like managing your cash flow, money coming in, money going out, but we also have buffers within the cash flow strategy. And the buffers are, if you have, like this winter, we were asleep and we heard this boom, and like the freaking pipe burst to our sprinkler system. And didn't we flush the sprinkler system? It burst and it like flooded our basement, right? And I was like, shit. But I realized, like, again, this goes to the story. It goes, I realized, like, okay, well, we have our deductible and we know how to do this. So we got it all shut off, everything taken care of. And, within a week, everything was fine. So the idea was like, I didn't have to stress about, do I have, $1,000 in the bank, right, that I can cover my deductible, right? It was like, I knew the insurance was there. I knew the deductible was there. I knew who to call. And what that did is allow me to go to the office the next morning and produce at the highest level.
Yep.
But if I don't have the cash, if something broke, right, and I'm like stressing about that, would I have been able to go to the office, right, and produce what I would have been able to produce? So same thing with life insurance. Right? I was going to bring that up. It's like, I know, like, and again, it seems so minimal, right? But the psychology, right, and how you show up to life with a specific psychology, certainty, confidence, courage, knowing that my family is going to get tens of millions of dollars in insurance if something happened to me. Like, I love my family to death. I would lay down in traffic in front of them or for them, but I don't know what's going to happen in my life, right? Something could happen to me, but that knowledge that they are going to be taken care of, and some yahoo isn't going to come along and try to marry my wife and give that, kids a bad experience, like, because she needs money. I know that they will be taken care of.
Yeah.
And that knowledge, right,
That
allows
knowing.
me to show up to life differently.
Yeah, there's a certainty with that for sure. 100%. Yeah, well said. So when you were talking about the pipes bursting, it was not only the cost of replacement for the flooding of the basement for the physical assets, but having that protection in place. Also, there's a cost if you weren't able to go to work. I'm sure it affect you to some degree. I mean, that thing, flood in your basement, there's stress that comes with that. But using the Infinity Wealth tool, I'm sure that has assisted you in managing that stress and the time that you spent worrying about that. Also, definitely the mindset side. But there's a cost also, like if you didn't have the maximum amount and you had to come out of pocket and that stressed you to balls that you had to take cash from somewhere else
Or
and
put it on a
in
credit
there,
card.
or put it on a credit card and take on that high interest rate and then have that last for a number of years. How many of you have debt that you're paying on and that debt came as a result of consumptive, destructive costs in your life, and that interest is ticking along and it stresses you out?
Or a cost that came from not having cash that was an unexpected expense, like a deductible.
100%. 100%. Yeah. So there's the seen and there's the unseen. And I hope you guys are drawing this correlation. We're going to bring it back to some practical applications also, but we wanted to set the stage and assist you to open up your mind and to see things from a different angle so you can leverage it and utilize it in your life to a higher degree. So when it comes to insurance, I love having this basic conversation. I call it basic. It's basic and profound conversation around insurance. We self-insure for the small stuff. We have higher deductibles if we have cash reserves that allow us to pay for those higher deductibles. So we self-insure for the small stuff. If I got in a fender bender with my car, and I have before in the past, thank goodness it's been years, and it was a couple of $1,000s to replace a panel or have something painted, I'm going to come out of pocket with that. I'm not going to submit a claim and pay a deductible and have my premiums go up as a result of that. So I'm going to self-insure for the small stuff. This is my premise. And if this works for you, I'd encourage you to adopt this in your life and coordinate it with all of your other money decisions. And yes, we're going to have a link in the show notes for an assessment and a tool, a protection tool that you can use. It's a writable PDF that will allow you to go through all of these areas in your life and measure them and see where you're at versus where you could be. But I'm going to self-insure for the small stuff. I'm going to use the insurance for something catastrophic, loss of life, disability, major liability claim, a replacement of a home or an automobile, definitely a replacement of a life. And so by having that in my life, just like you were saying, it frees me up mentally to, number one, not only enjoy life more, which I'm all about enjoying my life. I mean, we're only here for a certain amount of time, and God knows, like, we could be gone in an instant. I mean, just the other day, my neighbor next to me here, and if you're from northern Utah, you probably know this family, well known. He's in his mid-60s, had a heart attack and died. They're in this big, beautiful home. They're building this other one. They have this other lot they're thinking about doing some stuff with, all of these dreams and goals, and bam, gone in an instant. So I'm saying all that about enjoyment of life. Like, that's part about living wealthy and having things be untethered in our life versus being tethered to this box of conformity. And I'm like tensing up saying this because I'm feeling all of that. But
it's a contract to be miserable until you get what you want.
So when it comes to insurances, when it comes to protection, it's not only the property value insurances that we're talking about. And again, we're going to have the tool in here that you can click on in the show notes and assess the different insurances in your life and things that you can get out of them. But it's also the human life value protection, that courage and confidence for our mindset. And I don't know if I want to say I love that the most, but I kind of do. I love the consciousness that I'm asked. You asked, one of the questions that I've leveraged from that experience and many more in my life is raising my awareness and my consciousness level of a lot of different things in my life. So insurance can be confusing. Protection can be confusing at times. There's all these different opinions out there, but we're here to set it straight that there's security and maximization. $500,000 home, you can insure it for $500,000 and no more. So if you insure for $500,000 versus something less than that, you get the maximum amount on the home. Mm-hmm. There's security in that. There's peace of mind for yourself of knowing versus hoping that we've talked about. Same with your life. It's not our clients, but it's other people that we hear that say, "Oh, I don't want to leave all this money to my spouse if I die," and then she goes and marries or something like that. And I'm like, man, you got other things going on in your marriage besides this, my friend. So,
and we'll get into a lot of the estate planning stuff as well, which is
Yeah.
another way to protect money that you are in control of and have influence over today, that if something did happen to you, you can still have control and influence over it.
well said. Yeah. Well said. I want to, Patrick, really quick, talk about some economics from the late Les McGuire, one of my original business partners. Again, Les McGuire. Many of you may have known Les years ago. In fact, their anniversary of the plane crash, Ray Hooper and Les McGuire, along with the pilot Blaine, died in the plane crash June 8th of 2006. But Les shared and wrote this article titled "The Economic Value of Certainty."
And we're going to put that in the show notes.
Yeah,
as
we're
well.
going to add that to the show notes also for you to study, to look at, to read, to internalize, and leverage in your life. But he said this: economics, it's not just a financial discipline, but rather the science of the efficient use of any resource, right? Pure economics.
Economics is essentially it's the study of resources that have alternative uses.
Beautiful, beautiful. So there's economic, and the economic costs are not just limited to money that we're talking about. It's any resource that's being underutilized also is part of the economics, and just like you're saying. So in economic terms, risk is not then limited to potential loss of money. It's also broadened to include the possibility of underutilization of any resource. So like courage and confidence and underutilizing my ability to not only enjoy life, but be able to continue to create at the highest level. Because creating at the highest level fulfills us.
Well,
it's my self-interest.
Courage, confidence, conviction, certainty is a multiplier for the experience of life. It's a multiplier for the value you bring in your career, in your profession. It's a multiplier for the influence you have over your kids. It's a multiplier for the influence you have over yourself.
Yeah,
so
well
courage,
said.
confidence, conviction, right, multiplies the impact. And so having that as often as possible optimizes you as the resource that, this whole idea of economics is talking about. You are the ultimate resources that has infinite possibilities. You can optimize that every single day.
Well said. Yeah. Well said. And so like I'm sitting here thinking about it right now, and Les talked about this years ago. Wouldn't we want to like analyze not only the property value, insurance side of things, but then the other side of it that's not being evaluated when someone goes to buy insurance or protection in their life, but to also look at what the other costs are? Because there's a price to pay for a certain amount of insurance, like a premium that we pay. But what are the costs associated with that if we don't have it? And are those being measured? So I would think any benefit analysis that I would want to have, or that I would want for my clients to have, would measure both. Not just the price that they're going to pay for it, but the ultimate cost if they don't pay that in their life, which are those unseen areas.
Yep.
Yeah.
Opportunity.
Fascinating.
Yeah. And I look at, again, one of the things you said is like, how much can you protect? You can protect a lot. Are you going to be able to protect everything? Probably not. But then there's the optimal way to do it. And that's where we're going to get into the next episode that really talks about what protection has to do with wealth.
Yeah.
Okay. But the idea here is figuring out a way to optimize the use of protection components that will allow you to maximize the most important areas of your life. And oftentimes we see, as we provide financial, advice to people, is you can get more protection than you have right now for less out of pocket. Yeah. Right. So that's the kind of optimization idea, where most people just like buy insurance because it's a law. Okay. In certain insurances, you don't have to have it. You don't have to have life insurance. You don't have to have disability insurance. You have to have homeowners insurance. So people look at it as like, okay, what's the minimum I need to pay?
Auto insurance.
Auto insurance, homeowners insurance. Like there's insurance you have to have
by law.
But the way we're conditioned to set that up, right, is like least amount of cost, not maximum protection, optimal protection for the least amount of out of pocket. It's just an interesting way of looking at it.
I wasn't going to bring this up, but I'm going to now because you're talking about by law, you have to have homeowners insurance and auto insurance. But by law, you don't have to have life insurance. That's interesting, isn't it?
Don't worry, the government will take care of you.
And and at a deeper level, like one of the best things that I can do in my own life is not become a burden on society.
Yep.
And that's to be accountable myself. And so at a real deeper fundamental level, I think it's okay to share this here, like having these insurances, and if something happens, I'm not going to be putting burden on government subsidized programs or programs out there to take care of things. Now, I'm not saying that those shouldn't be there and those shouldn't help and assist people that don't have that. I'm not saying that at all. But I know for myself that it feels good for me and is empowering for me to have that. And if something happens, it's not going to be putting a burden on other programs that could be there to really help truly benefit someone that really needs that.
All right, so now I'm gonna lay down something that I didn't plan on, but I think this could be a good closing until so we can move to our next episode. I don't remember who my great grandfather was. I don't remember his father. 5 generations back, I have no idea. Now my mom does. My mom's like crazy about like family history and stuff. It's actually kind of like, okay, well, whatever. I don't remember who they were. I remember who my 6th grade uncle was. And the reason is because he brought purified water from Europe. Like the idea of purified water, he's a doctor, brought it to New York City.
Oh, wow.
Right? And he was funded by, some people in Europe. But I know him because he made an impact. He took his life and he did something that was memorable.
Yeah.
Looking at me, I'm not here just to survive. I feel compelled to put a dent in the universe, is to put my mark on the world in some way, whether it's my kids, whether it's my wife, whether it's society, right? And I know you feel the same way. Legacy is huge. Legacy is laid today. Your legacy is today.
Gives us purpose and
It's
meaning.
now, 100%. And looking at making an impact, okay? Impact is paramount, okay? At the same time, if you're listening to this podcast and you're just trying to survive, this is not the podcast for you. This is not the show for you. This is for those who want to make a difference in the world. They want to bring their uniqueness and put their mark on society, on the world, on their family, right? That makes a difference. Now, did my great-great-grandfather make a difference in my life? I probably have some DNA. I've actually seen pictures and, they have like my ears and like my nose and my ears, like I have, but anything else, like I don't know the difference that was made. I feel compelled to take my life, right, and use it for my maximization, optimization of life, but I want to make a difference in the lives of others.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said. Well said, Patrick. Thank you for that. There is a lot of fear, doubt, and worry, and lack of confidence, lack of courage. And again, I was in that pit for 3 years, and I've felt the pit many times since then. It's just I don't spend a lot of time in there. I shrunk that 3 years down to
3 minutes
to just moments, actually, right? And there's breath work, there's the Infinity Wealth tool, there's me questioning my thoughts, there's all these things that I do. I wake up on a daily basis to put myself in power. There's very specific things that I do today, and having those insurances in place for my property value assets, besides my human life value assets. So protection in all areas of our life does increase production. And that production is not only property value assets, but that production is also human life value assets, because human life value at the end of the day is the source and creator of all property value. So we want protection for both property value assets, the seen and the unseen, which, thinking about it more, there's some seen with the human life value also, not just unseen. But we want protection for both. The Infinity Wealth Tool will assist with that. 2 articles for you to reference in the show notes. Economic Value of Certainty article. Read that, study it. It's timeless. Les McGuire wrote it in 2003. And then also the protection component. It's a writable PDF, where you can look at all your different insurances. There's even questions in there that you can take to your individual advisor and challenge them on it. And there's ideas in there to increase your deductible that lowers your premium, and then take that savings and make sure you have the max amount of liability protection. Like, there's little tips and tricks in there that you can do
To optimize it.
to optimize all of that. But at the end of the day, it's to assist you and to untether from where you're at with your current beliefs around this area of your life when it comes to insurances. And again, those insurances are not just for your property value assets, but the more important human life value assets.
Hey, thanks for listening. You guys are awesome. Appreciate the support. Go head over to wealthuntethered.com. Show notes, resources are there. We also have a sign up for a newsletter so you can be kept up to speed with future episodes. So we'll be on the next episode. We're going to be talking about the two parallel paths of wealth accumulation.